Time for another video, asking my dad random questions. I'm not even telling you what the videos are about. It's not even worth it. It's like, well, you're going to say whatever you're going to say either way. So you don't know what this video is about. But I think it's interesting to extract what caused you to make two decisions in your life that happened within my lifetime, my early childhood. You joined the National Guard, and then you started like doing karate. I want to talk about that. You joined the National Guard in '82. I was born in '81. So, it's like you had been working the same place you're still working now. Have you been there officially 40 years yet?
In November.
So November makes 40 years since 1979. That you were how old when you started, like 21 or something?
I think so.
I can't imagine being at the same place as you were 21 and then like retiring from that same place. It's unheard of these days.
Yeah.
So a couple years, 2 or 3 years into you starting a job, then you join the National Guard. And this is interesting because in theory, this is a time of peace in the United States when this happens, because the Vietnam War had ended in the mid 70s. This is about 7 or 8 years later. Other than the Cold War, there's no real actual war. Well, we're ending, like 83 was the peak of everyone worrying that the end of the world was going to happen because of nuclear warfare. Like that was definitely had its presence. And I had watched Tom Hanks show the 80s in his one when he has an episode about this. But before we even start, you being an adult during that time, was that kind of what people were sensing, like, hey, now the other guys have nuclear warfare and we could blow each other up and that's the end of the world? Was that something that normal people thought of, or was that just something I saw on the show?
Yeah, I guess the scare was always there, but it wasn't really a worry like, well, we got to prepare, we got to be ready, I wasn't into that at that time.
So obviously that had nothing to do with your motivation. What drove you to say, hey, I want to join the National Guard?
I guess a couple things. One is my dad was a Korean War veteran. He was a Marine, and he was a highly decorated war veteran. And he was always after me, when I was in high school to join the military right after high school. He said, well, you're not tough enough for the Marines, and you probably just need to join like the Air Force or something. So anyways, I kind of felt like I might be doing it for him because he always wanted me to join the military.
And how old would you have been in '82? You were 24 when I was born, so you would have been 25. So you're in your mid 20s.
Yeah, about 25. Yeah.
And still, I think it's interesting from a psychiatric or psychological point of view. At age 25, you're mid 20s, but part of that motivation was still that your dad.
I think it was.
So let's pause on that for a moment, because in my hair loss videos, I constantly remind everybody, even though it's kind of said as a joke, I'm your hair loss daddy. When I say that, it's so important that we focus on your relationship with your father, or the relationship you don't have in relation to how you feel about yourself. This is something that is a major theme in my videos, especially those videos. So I think it's interesting that you were married, you had your first child, and still your father's influence on you had something to do in that decision. That's interesting.
Yeah. I kind of felt like, it was something I would make him proud, if I did it. Of course, I was always interested in it and thought it would be something that I'd want to do, but like you were saying, at the time I was already married and you were born, and so like full-time military really wouldn't have been a good choice. But the National Guard, yeah, I go for training and I come back and I'm going 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the summer. Okay, that's kind of both worlds, I can do that. So that's what I did.
And you were in it until what, 89? So you did about 7 years?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, about 7. Yeah.
And then what was your decision to get out?
Mainly job. Like at the time, there was a better job where I worked, and I'd put in for it. Well, it just happened to be the time we were going to leave for our summer training in the National Guard. And so either I had to be there for the interview for the new job or go with the Guard. So I thought, well, I've done this, I've been in here 7 years. I rose to the rank of sergeant, and I just kind of felt like I was done with that stuff.
And it's interesting when you think about it, because you were a welder from 79 to 89. For the first 10 years, like when you were a welder.
Yeah.
Like more of an, not exactly entry, well, maybe for that place it kind of was an entry level position. You had to go to tech school to learn the skill, but ultimately, like that was a tough job.
Yeah.
Welding for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then when you got your new job, that's still in ultimately what you're doing now, but a much lower version of it, right? I mean,
yeah.
Like, because this is the way I perceive things. We were on the lower side of middle class during the 80s. And then you got that new job and it propelled us to like, we're middle class now. We can definitely afford Nintendo. Like the original Nintendo, like I got in the Christmas of 89, which was kind of coinciding with this. Like we got to a new place and then we started saving up to build the new house that eventually in 1995 when I started high school. But like, and ultimately where you are now, like you're the quality control supervisor at your plant.
Mm-hmm.
And like, but that's still from that job that you got in 89, 90 because you didn't stick with the National Guard.
Right.
So obviously,
yeah,
it was the right decision.
Yeah. I decided, well, my job is what I do every day. It's for a living, but the National Guard was not. So to say, well, I'm going to keep on welding here and stay in the Guard, okay, I'm done.
And you went from out welding in the shops 100 degrees to now you're in office, but you got to you've got responsibility now. You're managing people, and ultimately that gave you skills that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And I'm sure you've never thought about this, but even from a parenting role, like, I was about second, third grade at the time, but anytime you're managing people, it's going to help you in your parenting skills. I know that from personal experience. But also you got out right before the Gulf War. You're like, right?
I've been couple years. Like 89, the Gulf War was what, 91?
90, 91.
Yeah.
So you got out before that. I don't know that you would have ended up over there in the Guard, but either way, like.
Yeah, I think the unit that I was in did go.
Oh yeah.
It did go.
So interesting timing there. So also though, in that mix, you started doing karate in 1984, 2 years after you started the National Guard.
Yeah. So
for like those 5 years, you were doing karate and National Guard and working the job. What caused you to start doing karate?
Well, as a child or even teenager, I was just really, really skinny. And I was always made fun of and picked on, of course, by the bullies and stuff all through school, which made me really hate school. It's always, having to deal with that. And I think too, because I was so skinny, and it's like, I couldn't even defend myself, even at the time. So when the opportunity came up that, hey, there's a karate school, right here in town, I could start taking. So yeah, I wanted to do it. And I think I always because of being skinny and being, people always put you down, always made me want to challenge myself. And maybe another reason, I went to the National Guard, just another challenge. But, the karate was really a challenge for me. Not being athletic, as we talked before, didn't do sports. I didn't care anything about sports, so I really wasn't athletic. But, this was something that I could do because I wasn't on a team. If you're not very good, you make your team bad. I wasn't on a team. It was just me. So that's one reason I really enjoyed karate, because whatever happened, whether I won or lost, it was just me. So. And
just to be sure, you were doing karate lessons as it started out, and you got your way up to what, 4th degree black belt?
Second degree.
So, and you were doing those tournaments. Like, this is during the 80s, like when the movie Bloodsport was like a big deal.
Yeah.
Like these karate tournaments where it wasn't full contact. And you had the pads on. No, you didn't have the pads on during the actual tournament.
We did have pads.
But either way, you got at least 1 or 2 black eyes. Then you get a busted nose, and you'd have to go back into work.
Yeah.
And have all the stupid people say, "Would your wife beat you up again?"
Yeah.
Stupid stuff.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Like going into an office job. It's like the movie Fight Club where he shows up and he's got a black eye and bruises.
Yeah, it was supposedly a lot contact, but like you said, I actually had this eye socket fractured. I was hit so hard. My nose, was just busted so many times, and of course my mouth. I had a couple of broke ribs from it. All lot contact fighting. But you know, it was enjoyed it. It was a challenge at the time, and you know, we had these tournaments we'd go to, and you'd get points for whatever place. You know, if you got the first place in that, whatever. And then at the end of the year, whoever had the most, you know, and then you were rated for the state. And so 3 years in a row, I got second in the state, but I never got the first. But I did beat the first place player and won the fight. So
kind of like in the Rocky 2, when he beats Apollo.
Yeah.
But yeah, whereas the first one he didn't even beat the guy, but he came close. Yeah. So I just spoiled the ending to Rocky 1 from 1976. If you haven't seen that movie, I just ruined a movie that's 40 years old. I want to point out this. I'm always looking at the psychology and things. So these are, we have a video we're about to shoot about my own, what I'm calling my midlife crisis. But for you, that's all during your 20s. During your 20s, you still have this need to still kind of please your dad in your 20s. And still like make up for being bullied when you're in high school in your 20s. Like these are things happening in your 20s where you're reinforcing your identity. And I talk about that a lot in my videos. It's not until your mid 30s do you really understand who you are, why you exist, what you're good at, what you're bad at. This is a decade of your life, you're figuring this still out. And granted, you're the best person for fixing cars and building anything. And you had those skills already, but still, these were extra things you were doing to form your identity in your 20s, even though you were married and had a kid. For me, I wasn't married until I was 27. I didn't have a kid until I was 29 and a half. And so, but it's interesting though, like that's, I think, part of the male experience. You figure this stuff out. And just because you're a certain age, it doesn't mean you have those things figured out. But I think subconsciously your brain knows, these are things in my life I haven't figured out yet, and I need to get these put in place. Do you see that at all? I mean, in hindsight?
Yeah.
Think you've never thought about it until this video, but
yeah.
And that's why I like to make these videos, just because it kind of draws things out of figuring out who you are.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm an accidental psychiatrist. Your comments belong right here.